Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here with another Anabolic Q&A. I've got some awesome questions on deck this week. We have a question about Metformin, if I still feel strongly about Metformin in a bodybuilding regimen for increasing insulin sensitivity, or are there better options now? We'll talk about gaining muscle while blasting over 60, if that is even possible, when to start orals on contest prep, and how to catch a huge rebound to gain a crap ton of muscle post-show or post-diet phase. What are the principles that I think are important for that post-show rebound? Folks, all the questions from this Q&A are from my Team Anabolic Bodybuilding member site. If you want to become a member, you can go over to the link below in the video description. It is a great community. We have over 100 members over there right now. It's super cheap. It's about $30 a month. And I answer questions personally over there. I check it daily and follow up with people that have questions. And people that are members get priority questions on the Anabolic Q&A that I put up on YouTube. I also grabbed a couple user questions this week from just YouTube comments. We'll have those up as well to give you guys a fair run too. I also do the live Q&A on Saturdays or Sundays, on the weekends with the AB Live podcast. We get some questions in from the audience on that one as well if you want to tune into that. Anyway, folks, if you want to join, link is in the video description. Enough of that crap. Let's get into these questions in just 1 second. All right, first question I have here is from Scott Brinkman, a member of the Team Anabolic Bodybuilding members site over at school. Scott asks, as competition day approaches, how many weeks out would you employ orals like Winstrol, Halotestin, and Anavar? And how far out would you stop the injectables like Test, Masteron, and Serostim? I have some general rules of thumb, but I don't usually do a one-size-fits-all protocol. I think some of it depends on your tolerance of some of these drugs. Age plays a factor into it, injury history, etc. You might ask why injury history. If you're a guy with creaky joints, someone who's pretty banged up, an old dude like me, you probably don't want to start running Winstrol early on. Winstrol really dries out your joints and makes your joints feel like hell. So I do like the cosmetic effect that Winstrol has, but I will save it for the last 14 days, 10 to 14 days, and then run it hard. If I need an oral before that, I'll just run a little bit of Anavar pre-workout, something like 50 milligrams on workout days, only 2 to 3 hours before a workout. I'll sometimes start that 5 to 6 weeks out. Last year, I mostly just waited until the end and ran the Winstrol at the end. The problem I find with the orals is if you hit them too hard and too fast and too early, what ends up happening is you'll feel great for a week or two, and then shit just starts to go downhill. You're already under a lot of stress, and I'll see liver enzymes creep up, and dudes start to feel like dog shit. I learned this hard and fast approach with the Winstrol towards the end from AJ Sims, and it seems to work really well. I can tolerate the high dose of Winstrol for the last 10 days or so without much of a problem. And it's not like you're training hard then anyway. So that is an option. I do know bodybuilders professionally that do not run orals at all. I talk frequently with Roman Fritz, and he does not run orals at all on contest prep. There's no rule saying that you have to run orals on contest prep. Now, they do bring some unique benefits. One of the things I do like is you can yank the injectables out early and lean on the orals. That's why I run the Winstrol high the last 2 weeks or so going into the show so I can yank the injectables. The issue with the injectables, and I see this a lot at national shows when I've been at national shows. There was a dude last year when I was at North Americans. I'm sorry, bro, if I'm upsetting or offending you. You probably know who I'm talking about. But that was just covered in lumps. His shoulders were just covered in lumps. You do not want to come into a show looking like that. And part of the pulling the injectables early is to get rid of that inflammation from the injections. We don't want lumps on stage. It is just not a good look on stage. I don't think the judges like it. At least I wouldn't find it appealing if I were a judge. Also, you have risk of having an abscess, so I would be very, very careful with that. I know a lot of guys like to run injectable Winstrol, but I've seen injectable Winstrol cause abscesses and problems, so I'm very leery of running injectable Winstrol going into the end. The pulling the GH really just depends on how you're looking. If you need a little more fullness, if you're a guy that tends to stay dry and fullness is more important, then I would run the GH in closer to the show. If you're a guy that's having a hard time drying out, then maybe yank the GH a couple weeks out and dry out. It really just depends on how the body looks. And it's the same thing with the PED choices going into the show. It's about what you tolerate, what you respond well to, what you're looking like going into the show. But general rule of thumb is I like to pull the injectables 7 to 10 days out from the show, crank up the orals going into the show. And usually the GH, I'll wait till a little later to pull, like 3 to 4 days out from the show. I tend to flatten out, so I will leave it in up until like maybe 3 days out from the show, and then I yank it and drop a bunch of water. Water flushes up, but that's sort of my approach. Jeremy Fox asks, it would be cool to hear your opinion on aggressive rebounds versus other routes. I know you have a few videos up on your past rebounds, but it would be cool to hear your view for someone like me that plans on hitting a national stage in 14 months to blast their face off and try to get a pro card. I have a different opinion on that post-show phase than I would say 99% of coaches. I know a lot of guys do this slow reverse out of the show, which I get the logic behind it. It's to keep people from getting fat. There is potential for people to get fat post-show, but I think there's some things you can do to prevent that and get a good rebound. So guys will slowly taper up the calories over a 6 to 8 week period of time to give people time to acclimate. The problem with that I run into every freaking time is ghrelin always wins. You like, let's say you come out of a show and you say, well, we're just going to slowly reverse you out of the show. Inevitably, that dude's going to go hit the buffet, eat pizza, slam some ice cream, and just lose his goddamn mind. I am very strong mentally when it comes to diet. I can go an entire contest prep without having a single cheat and not doesn't faze me. But I get in that post-show period, I lose my goddamn mind sometimes. I remember going to Costco and buying a jumbo family pack of chocolate chip cookies post-show. I don't know why. Costco was the first place I wanted to go post-show, but I wanted a slice of pizza from Costco and some of their chocolate chip cookies. I ate that entire goddamn carton of chocolate chip cookies. I think there were like 2, 3. I think there were 3 dozen cookies in there. I must have had 20,000 calories in cookies in one sitting. My stomach was annihilated. I can't tell you how many stories we've heard of guys going on post-show benders. Even the most well-intentioned person, ghrelin demon, just jumps on your shoulder and you lose your shit. So my thought process is guys are going to be hungry post-show. Gastric emptying is going to be high. Insulin sensitivity is going to be high. mTOR or AMPK is going to be low. mTOR is going to be potentially high if you increase food. Myostatin is going to be low. It's just the perfect environment for growing. So why not let's just eat a shit ton of really healthy, clean, low-fat food. You're probably going to be glycogen depleted now as well in that post-show period, so you have the ability to synthesize a bunch of glycogen. So let's just push the carbs up, keep the fats low, and most guys are going to be satiated. Usually I'll just tell guys to eat whatever the hell they want for a day after the show, and then we get back locked in, and I get aggressive with the food. Now, there are situations where we have to be a little more cautious. Sometimes people have this issue post-show where their blood sugar will shoot through the roof. It seems to be from hyponatremia, electrolyte imbalances that happens. And if we get in a situation where blood sugar is shooting up to like 200-300 post-show, then we might need to be a little more conservative with the carbohydrates and keep things lower. If we have a situation where there's a really bad water rebound, some guys have bad water rebounds, we might need to be a little more conservative with the food post-show. So this is one of those things that we need to play it by ear. But I would say probably 75% of the time, post-show, post-hard diet, we can get aggressive with the food. And in that 6 to 8 week period post-show, I've seen guys gain 30, 40 pounds with minimal fat gain. I know all the science nuts are out there are going to say that that's impossible. You can't do that, that you're not possibly gaining that much tissue. I've talked about it before. I get that it's probably, it's likely not contractile tissue. It's sarcoplasm. It's water retention. It's a bunch of other, water and mineral retention, glycogen synthesis, all these other things that are going on. But that seems to lay the framework down for a productive off season. And I can show you over and over and over and over again. You can see my history of my rebound. I've had clients that I've brought out that you can look at my Instagram. I have my client Reese, who we did, dude's up like 40 pounds post show, and he still has lines in his glutes. So for the science gurus out there that say it's impossible, how do you explain a 40-pound weight gain post show and you still have lines in your glutes when you clearly are still probably 10% body fat or maybe even less? I don't know. All I can say is it works most of the time. There are exceptions, just like everything else. But if you're aggressive, if you keep your diet clean, another important thing is, and I think this is another place where guys screw up, they feel like they got to come off all the drugs immediately post-show. They drop all the fat burners, they drop all the gear. I've heard a lot of guys say, let's clean out, let's pull everything, let's yank even testosterone. And what happens when you do that? You have a hormonal crash. You lose all those androgens that were keeping you lean. You crash your metabolism because you yank the fat burners cold turkey, and you end up in a situation where you're in an estrogen dominant environment. Ghrelin is through the fucking roof. And you get in a situation where you can set people up with rapid fat gain. So I think a lot of times the rapid fat gain post-show is not because of the food. It's because of the crappy hormonal environment that people have created. So what's a better option is to let's just drop all the orals. We'll lower the AASs down, maybe like half what you were doing on contest prep with the added food that's going to be plenty to maintain. And then we taper off the fat burners over maybe like a 3-week or 4-week period of time, or even maybe employ some retatrutide post-show to suppress appetite a little bit and to keep you more metabolically healthy. That is another option that I would consider at this point to keep guys from going on benders and allowing for better body composition over that rebound period. So, but I think most people are too conservative. And what I see is the guys that are conservative, they never take leaps forward in their physique. They end up just looking the same on stage every year. They come in at 185 this year, they're 186 next year, they're 187 the following year. They don't make these huge weight class leaps. If you want to make the leap from heavyweight to super heavyweight or from light heavyweight to heavyweight, you got to get aggressive with the food to a certain degree. Now, that's not an excuse to get fat. It's not an excuse to go out and eat pizza and ice cream. It's not an excuse to house an entire family size thing of cookies from Costco like I did. You still have to be intelligent with things. My good friend Amy Killian asked, how's the recovery going? I would love to hear about how you're feeling, PT, peptides, everything. The shoulder recovery, I'm still in the sling. Hopefully I can get out of it next week. The PT said I should be able to get out of it next week. We'll see. It'll be for 4 weeks post-surgery, which is early. Usually they have you wear it for 6 weeks. But all in all, the shoulder's feeling fantastic. The bicep's a little sore. Bicep's still inflamed from where they reinserted the bicep tendon. But I would say overall, I've been pleasantly surprised with how minimal the pain has been. Definitely not even on the same spectrum as when I had my ACL repaired. Not even fucking close. There's no comparison between the two. The ACL was way worse. The recovery sucked way worse. Now we'll see long term where I'm at. But right now it feels great. If I were an idiot, a younger idiot, I'd probably be back in the gym trying to do exercises with it. But I know that graft, that bicep tendon graft is not fully healed. It's going to take several months to heal, probably 4 to 5 months to heal before I can, even with GH, peptides, etc., before I can put a full load on it. But yeah, I am running a peptide protocol right now, primarily BPC 157, TB 500, GH, some other stuff I have got sprinkled in there as well. I am also running just TRT right now, just 200 milligrams of testosterone. I don't see any reason to do anything other than that. When I can start putting some weight on it and doing some actual training, which they said probably here in the next week or two, we're going to start doing, probably just like band work and things like that. Then maybe I'll throw in some Anavar. That is a potential thing that's going to be added in. But so far, so good. Everything is rolling perfectly. I am happy with where I'm at right now. All right, next question is from Sean Dean. Do you still recommend Metformin for insulin sensitivity? There's been a walk back by others saying that it messes up with muscle building or something like that. Peter Adia, who I'm somewhat skeptical of, is also another guy I'm thinking of. Yeah, I know Dr. Atia yanked it. He said if I recall correctly, he said he noticed that he saw performance decreases in the gym, which there's a multitude of reasons for that. But I'd say buckle up for this one. I'm going to go into kind of a deep dive on Metformin. And yeah, I've kind of come full circle on it as well. I still, a few years ago, it was the best option that we had. Now, with all of the new GLP-1s, especially with retatrutide, it may make Metformin completely obsolete, to be honest with you. It addresses all of the issues that Metformin did and probably better, and doesn't have all of the potential downsides that Metformin has with muscle building. Now, I will say this, so with Metformin, you're going to have lowered mTOR, increased AMPK, which is, counter-regulatory for muscle building. Retatrutide does not have that effect on it. You also have lowered IGF-1 with Metformin. You're not going to have that effect probably with something like retatrutide. So those are some things that you do have to worry about. Now, I will say this. I have tested my IGF-1 when running Metformin. I have not noticed any decline in I ran when I had that great rebound, and when I gained all that weight over the last few years and went from like 180 on stage up to 250 on stage, I was running 1,000 milligrams of Metformin the entire time. So you tell me, did it impact my muscle gains? I don't know. Maybe they could be better. I do notice a small drop in strength when I run Metformin versus when I come off of it in the gym, and that's probably related to how it affects ATP production, which it does limit ATP production. It suppresses gluconeogenesis and some other things. It affects the liver's metabolism of glucose and increases insulin sensitivity, although I've seen some arguments that it's not even that great at increasing muscle cell insulin sensitivity. Something like a PPARY agonist would be a better option for increasing muscle insulin sensitivity, although PPARY agonists come with their own set of problems. Some people report increased fat gain with the PPARY agonists. Probably the simplest thing to do is just do some damn cardio, lift some weights, take some berberine. That's probably where I would start people off at, just as a basic baseline. But on paper, keep in mind we're still early on. The benefits from retatrutide are all that we get with Metformin, plus other benefits as well from the GLP-1, the GIP, the glucagon agonist. It's a triple agonist that just does it seems like it fixes fucking everything. I did a video yesterday about how my lipids are the best they've ever been on 1 milligram. 1 milligram. I am a full-blown retatrutide fanboy, and I have a feeling that retatrutide, when it gets approved by the FDA, is going to replace a multitude of drugs. Like for my diabetes treatment that I'm on right now, my doctor has switched me to Mounjaro, which I don't think has been effective as the retatrutide was. I am on Metformin 1,000 milligrams per day and 20 units of Lantus per day. That is my treatment for my type 1B diabetes, and I don't notice as significant of a difference as I did with the retatrutide. And I also noticed no drop off in strength in the gym with the retatrutide. It is not going to lower mTOR and increase AMPK like you would, and potentially IGF-1. I don't know about that for sure, but that would in theory would probably be true. But I will say this: the studies that were done on metformin showing these lowered IGF-1 and lowered mTOR and increased AMPK were done on like 60-year-old dudes that were natties and diabetics. Probably not the best representation of our cohort. What I have seen is if you're blasting a bunch of gear, taking insulin and taking GH, it has zero impact on muscle growth. I like I said, I put on 70 pounds of stage weight in 3 years while taking 1,000 milligrams of metformin per day. So, but I do think that we are progressing to new therapies that are likely going to replace it, and metformin is probably going to be obsolete at some point very soon. All right, next question here is from a school member and one of my coaching clients, Paul Robinson. Paul asked, a couple of years ago, I focused my diet and training in, and currently in a fat loss phase, doing PPL 6 times a week. My legs lag my upper body by a good margin. If I only have 3 build phases to my next goal over the next 3 years in my 50s, how would you use them? Focus on legs and get the proportions right without sacrificing some upper body training volume, or to continue to bring things up and see how everything is over time? I had the same issue, and I still do. My legs are still a bit behind my upper body, but I've been really working hard to bring my legs up. Legs are an issue as you get older. It seems like that's the first place guys struggle with putting size on. I think a lot of it has to do with knee injuries, maybe spine. Guys can't load squats like they could before, or maybe don't have the neurological connection with their legs like they once did because of, degradation of spinal health over years of abuse. But here's what I did. I split my leg training, and I think you're probably doing the same, Paul, if you're running my program. I split my leg training up over 2 days. I completely dropped doing barbell squats. I found that barbell squats were very unproductive for my leg growth. And it was a multitude of things that I came to a conclusion with the squats, that they are highly fatiguing. They are, you're placing a huge amount of axial loading. We're taking a risk with your spine, which I think is something that I really want to avoid as I get older, that I want to protect my spine as much as I possibly can, protect my knees as much as I possibly can. And they just aren't that great of a stimulus for quads, especially if you're tall like me. Now, there are going to be the guys in the comment section that are going to be arguing and say, well, look at Tom Platz. Tom Platz squatted, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Tom Platz was like 5'3" and short legs. Guys with short legs do really well with squats. Tall guys like me with long femurs, not so great. It ends up just being a lower back exercise. So some of this is unique to your physiology. But I will say this, if you look at most pro bodybuilders now, how they train legs, it's mostly hack squats, leg presses, leg extensions, maybe some split squats or something like that. I think most guys now have wised up and realized that you can't train your entire legs in a single day. There's such large and fatiguing muscle groups. You need to break it up. So I like to focus on quads on an A leg day. And then on my B leg day, it's more adductors, hamstrings, and glutes. So you can split that up. I do train hamstrings twice a week. What I find is that most guys have decent quad size because they really only train their quads. Where they're lacking and where you can add more size to your legs is bringing up your hamstrings, bringing up your adductors. Most people completely neglect their adductors, and the adductors can be up to 30 to 40% of your entire girth of your thigh. So most people are completely missing that. And if you look at bodybuilding shows on the amateur level, where is the area on legs that guys are deficient? It's almost always adductors. You can see dudes on stage with huge thigh gaps. And it drives me nuts. Like guys, you can tell they never train their adductors because their thighs do not touch. They got like a 6-inch gap in their fucking thighs when they're on stage, and it makes your legs look really small. If you want to fill your legs out, grow your adductors, grow your hamstrings. If you want your legs to look dense from the side, get your hamstrings bigger. Those are the areas that I focused on to really improve and bring my legs up, and it made the overall appearance of my legs look bigger. And really, that's what it's about for bodybuilding. It's what you look like on stage. I think guys get hung up on quads, thinking it's all quads. I would definitely put a huge focus on bringing up adductors. Adductors are going to make a huge difference in how your legs appear on stage. All right, next question is from my friend at the Rise 41 podcast. What are the limiting factors for lean muscle growth? Does it change or accelerate with higher doses of PEDs? And if so, is there a minimum effective dose for PEDs? Well, I will say this, more works. It definitely works. And I will say, I don't think that most guys, and this is going to be a controversial take, don't push hard enough to really get any significant growth. Now, it's not a prescription to go out and just be reckless and do whatever you want and get, just do stupid things with the PEDs. You got to have your diet buttoned up. You got to have your training buttoned up, and it is progressive. It's not like you would go out and blast 2 grams of gear right out of the gate and expect to get more result. It doesn't work that way. It would be like trying to eat 6,000 calories to supercharge your growth versus where your BMR is already at 30 or 3,000 calories. You're just going to get fat if you do that. If you go straight to the 2 grams of gear without taking incremental steps up to it, you're just going to make yourself sick and probably have a bunch of side effects and not actually grow any more than you would have if you just used a little less. Now, the minimum effective dose is what works for you. I will say this. What I have found that when we get into super physiological dosing of testosterone, it's north of 300 milligrams. Up to 300 milligrams is really just high-end TRT. I don't find guys get a lot of muscle growth outside of maybe some initial gains by pushing, by keeping it under 300 milligrams. It's really hard to put on. And you're going to need to add a secondary anabolic in there with that as well. Likely some growth hormone, so you're hitting that pathway as well, the IGF-1 pathway. As guys progress and get further down the road, then insulin sometimes fits into that mix as well for nutrient uptake. But I would say most guys, like kind of the bare minimum level for super physiological bodybuilding for hypertrophy is probably something like 300 milligrams of testosterone and 200 milligrams of whatever anabolic you're running. I would say really testosterone doesn't really start to shine until you hit 500 milligrams and get north of that. That's kind of like beginner cycle, I would say, in that range. In kind of intermediate cycle would be 500 to 750 milligrams of testosterone as a base, and then something like 400 to 600 milligrams of an anabolic. And then like advanced, like pro level bodybuilders are usually north of a gram or around a gram or more with testosterone. And then even I've seen guys take up to 3 grams. GH, up to 5 units is sort of a replacement dose. But it's a progressive thing. You progress over a period of time. And I would say if you're growing on a lower dose, then leave it there. Don't push up until you need to. Save it for when you need to. I usually would suggest starting with diet and training optimization first. And then once diet and training optimization has been tapped out, then you can look at upping the doses of PEDs or adding other compounds. As for the limiting factors for growth, some of it, the big part of it's just genetics, your ability to digest food and to uptake food. Some guys just can't handle the food volume necessary to grow. Some dudes just have a genetic limit on how big they can get. I've seen guys, it doesn't matter how many PEDs they take, they just don't get big. Probably, somebody that's like a pro bodybuilder, like if you look back, like at Ronnie Coleman's starting point was better than what most people are on steroids. It's sort of like playing basketball when you're 7 feet tall. It's a lot easier to play basketball when your starting point is at 7 feet tall. Genetics are a limiting factor. Your ability to tolerate pain in the gym as far as, training. A lot of guys can't train to failure. A lot of guys can't, they don't have the joint and tendon integrity to be able to progress their loads enough to get big enough. There's a multitude of factors. Having the frame to actually be effective, your tolerance of the PEDs. I've seen some guys have incredibly wrecked blood work just running TRT, and then there's other dudes that can run grams and everything looks perfect. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it also responds to the PEDs. I tend to be a good responder. I don't have to run high doses to get a response to the PED. Some guys can run, super high amounts and not have much of a response. Some guys get sick. So there are a multitude of genetic factors that come into play, and it's not just your ability to grow muscle. You have to be able to tolerate the drugs. You have to be able to eat. You have to be able to process the food that you're eating. You have to be able to withstand the loads that are necessary and the type of training that's necessary to grow, have joint, tendon, and muscle structure that can tolerate that and look good on stage. So there's all these other factors that play into it as well. It's not just a steroid game. All right, the last question here is from Bernard Vance 9041. This is a good one. I am 62 years old. I am currently 230 pounds at 10% body fat. Everybody says they're 10% body fat. Not trying to slight you, Bernard, but I hear a lot of people tell me they're 10% body fat when they're really 20. Will it be possible for me to step on stage at 240 pounds in 3 years? I'm currently on 1 gram of test, 700 milligrams of Primo, 6 units of Serostim, 100 milligrams of NPP, and I would prefer to avoid cruising if possible on the permanent blast to Mars. We're riding the rocket ship to Mars at 60, a couple of years old. Look, when you get older, it's not impossible to grow muscle, but it does become more difficult. I've had some of my guys that are masters competitors over 60 that have made some pretty significant progress. And let's do some math here. Let's say that you are truly 230 pounds at 10% body fat. You're going to be 5 on stage, and then there's going to be some water involved in there as well. So we're probably talking about 15 to 20 pounds that you would need to lose to be in stage shape. So realistically, I would say stage shape is probably 210 pounds at your current weight. If we're talking about stepping on stage at 240, that is 30 pounds of real contractile tissue, not fat, not water retention, real contractile tissue in 36 months. We are, so we're talking about somewhere roughly around a pound of muscle per month. Now I've talked about this a million times. We can look at the upper limit of what is possible. I think Big Ramy and Nick Walker are good examples of that. Ideal situations, both young guys, great genetics, ability to lift, process food, as we talked about in the previous question. Those dudes, if you look at it, and these are the best in the world, put on about 100 pounds of muscle over a 10-year stretch of time. So on average, about 10 pounds per year. That's about the best case scenario, 10 pounds of real stage weight in a year. Now, you'll see, like I had that blow up where I put on, 70 pounds in 3 years. And that's a bit misleading because I was over-dieted for the first show. And I was big in my 20s. I was up to as high as 300 pounds. Now, granted, it was a power lifter look. It wasn't really a bodybuilder look, but I was a big dude. So some of that was just reclaiming my old gains and muscle memory. I would say for a guy your age, if you can put on 4-5 pounds of real contractile tissue, stage weight in a year, that is an incredible amount of progress, and you're going to look completely different. If you were just on stage at 220, I don't know what your height is. In the over 60 division, you're probably winning a pro card. Last year when I was at Masters Nationals, maybe I'm wrong, I do not recall there being any super heavyweights that were in shape. There may have been 1 or 2 that were super heavyweights that weren't in shape in the over 60 division. They just don't exist. Or if they do, they're extremely uncommon. So you would be an outlier. You'd be like 1 in several million, one of the only people in the world that would be a super heavyweight competitor at over 60. So I would say I'm not trying to tell you to sell yourself short. I encourage everybody to follow their goals, their dreams, make the most of everything they have. But I would say that is a bit of a long shot. That we know what the established best case scenario is when you're young, you have a good tolerance for the PEDs, you can handle the training, all that stuff. And I would say at 62 years old, that's probably not going to happen. Like I said, if you could put on 5 pounds in a year, that is incredible. So I would say, if you could set a goal in 3 years to be 220 on stage, 225 on stage, that's probably more realistic. You would be 65 years old at that point. I would say that is the best case scenario. And even that's going to be aggressive. Now, when it comes to the cruise, I would say a cruise is going to be especially important for you at your age. You're going to have to take probably extended periods of time and pull down the TRT. I would say probably 4 or 5, 6 months a year. I would not want to be blasting straight like that at 60 some years old, because after a while your body just taps out, you get sick. I try to spend about 4 to 5 months a year on just TRT. And I am 51. I find that my body actually responds better when I go back on blast. I actually have more gains when I do it that way. I'm letting my body have a break. I'm letting my health recover. I'm letting fatigue wash off. I just don't think it's going to be productive to be pushing year-round, especially at your age. Even for a young guy, it might not make a whole lot of sense. You can get away with a lot more when you're younger. Keep that in mind. When I was 22 years old, I could go out and drink Jaeger bombs, smoke weed, stay up until 3 in the morning, get up at 5 and go to work, and then train in the evening and still make gains. If I did that now, I would be in a hospital bed. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for your support. You mean the world to me. I really thank you for following my channel and supporting me. I'll see you on the next episode. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.